Ever feel like you're just kind of scratching the surface of, like, your potential? Mm-hmm. Well, get ready, because today we are diving into a system that claims to unlock some serious, serious inner power.
Oh, yeah.
We're talking the 6 yogas of Naropa.
Straight from the heart of Tibetan Buddhism.
We're going deep.
We are talking practices so intense, it said they can bring enlightenment within reach in a single lifetime.
Okay, gotta admit that's a bold claim.
Yeah.
But, we're all about exploring those bold claims here.
Absolutely.
So where do we even start with something this complex?
Well, our main sources for this deep dive are commentaries on the 6 yogas. Specifically, we're looking at scholars like Tsongkhapa
Okay.
and Gultu Dharmopadra.
All right.
There are guides through this intricate world, and they trace this lineage back to Naropa himself,
Okay.
a bit of a spiritual maverick back in the 11th century.
All right, so we've got, like, our historical context.
Yeah.
But what makes these 6 yogas stand out, even in a tradition known for, shall we say, rigorous practices?
Right. Think of the most, elite training program.
Okay.
Not for your muscles, but for your mind.
Yeah.
And energy.
Mm-hmm.
The 6 yogas, they're not about passively waiting for enlightenment. They're about actively cultivating the conditions for it to arise.
Okay.
We're talking very precise techniques designed to, I'd say, supercharge your spiritual development.
Okay, you've definitely piqued my curiosity. What kind of techniques are we talking about here? Give me an example.
All right, imagine this. You're meditating, right? But you're not just watching your breath, you're visualizing it as this vibrant, fiery energy flowing through specific channels in your body. And get this, you're using visualizations of syllables.
Syllables.
Like H-U-M, O-M, A-H, strategically placed within your energy system, almost like dripping like dew before bursting into flames.
That sounds intense, and I thought just focusing on my breath was hard enough. Where does the whole enlightenment part come in with all this internal fire breathing?
Right. That's where the concept of bodhicitta comes in.
Bodhicitta.
Think of it as this blissful energy that you cultivate through these practices. The goal is to visualize it, literally melting and flowing through those channels, generating different levels of bliss as it travels.
So it's about generating these intense states of bliss.
Yeah.
Sign me up. But I'm guessing there's more to it than just feeling good, right? How does that connect to the bigger picture of enlightenment?
Yeah, it's not just about the feeling itself. It's about what that intense experience allows you to realize. The source emphasizes pairing this bliss with a deep understanding of emptiness.
Right.
Which is this core Buddhist concept about the very nature of reality. It's about recognizing that things lack inherent independent existence.
Okay, pause for a second. I know emptiness can be kind of a tricky concept. Could you unpack that a little more for us? What does it actually mean in this context?
It's not about things not existing at all. It's more about understanding that everything is interconnected, impermanent, always changing.
Okay.
And the 6 yogas, they use these intense practices to help you experience this truth directly.
So intense bliss plus this deep understanding of emptiness equals enlightenment. Is that the equation we're working with here?
You could say that, but it gets even more intriguing.
Okay.
To reach the highest levels of this practice, the source mentions something called a karma mudra might be needed.
Karma.mudra. Okay, now you have to elaborate. What in the world is a karma mudra?
Well, here's where things get a little mysterious. The source is intentionally vague, but it hints that it might involve another person. And not just anyone will do. They have to be a specific type of practitioner, someone who aligns with your energy in a particular way.
Okay, now my interest is officially piqued. This is starting to sound like we're entering a world of secret rituals and, hidden knowledge.
It's definitely a path less traveled. And speaking of mysteries, the source also mentions dakinis. These are powerful female beings who can aid practitioners on their journey.
Dakinis. This is all getting very mystical. Are we about to uncover some ancient secrets?
We're definitely venturing into uncharted territory. But before we go further down that rabbit hole, we need to talk about how the 6 yogas view death.
Okay.
And what happens after.
Okay, we're talking inner fire, melting bliss, mysterious partners, and now death. This deep dive just keeps getting more and more intriguing. Let's unpack it all after. All right, so we're back, and things are about to get a little more, shall we say, existential. We were just starting to talk about death in the 6 yogas. What's the connection there?
It's not just about what happens after you die, right? It's about how these practices prepare you for that transition.
Yeah.
See, the 6 yogas, They're not content with just this life.
Right.
They're aiming for mastery over death itself.
Mastery over death. Okay, now you've really lost me. How do you even begin to master something like that?
It starts with understanding the subtle body. Think of it as like a deeper, more refined layer of your being, made up of these subtle energies that persist even after physical death. And the 6 yogas, they're designed to help you become aware of and eventually control this subtle body.
Okay, so there's this whole other level to our existence that we're usually not even aware of.
Right.
And the 6 yogas help us tap into that.
Yeah.
How?
Through practices like dream yoga, for example.
Okay.
Imagine like training yourself to become conscious while you're dreaming. That's essentially what this is.
Like lucid dreaming.
Yeah.
That's a real thing. I thought that was just for like movie plots.
Oh, it's a very real practice, and a central one in the 6 yogas. By becoming aware in the dream state, you start to gain control over your subtle body. And then there are meditations on death itself.
Meditations on death. That sounds a little intense, even for this deep dive.
It's not about being morbid or anything.
Right.
It's about familiarizing yourself with the process of dying, stripping away the fear and uncertainty.
Right.
The source suggests that by contemplating death, you can begin to understand the nature of your own consciousness.
Okay.
And how it continues beyond the physical body.
So you're saying by facing death head on, we can actually start to experience a different way of being, even while we're still alive.
Exactly, yeah. And this ties directly into the idea of the bardo.
Okay.
That's that intermediate state between lives, according to Tibetan Buddhism.
Right.
The 6 yogas teach that by mastering these practices, you can consciously navigate the bardo.
Okay.
And potentially even achieve liberation from the cycle of rebirth.
Liberation? Are we talking about escaping reincarnation altogether?
That's the ultimate goal, yeah. And the source gets pretty specific about the bardo, actually. It describes it as having 13 unique attributes.
Okay.
For instance, it says that beings in the bardo have a kind of clairvoyance. They're able to perceive each other, but are invisible to the living.
So, like a ghost world, but with less haunting and more subtle energy.
More like a state of pure potential. And here's where things get really interesting. The source suggests that the actions of those still living can actually influence someone's experience in the bardo. So like, if your loved ones are performing good deeds on your behalf, it could positively impact your journey after death.
That's kind of a beautiful thought, that our connections continue to ripple outwards even after we're gone. But let's be real, there's one aspect of all this tantric stuff that I think everyone's wondering about.
I think I know where you're going with this.
Is it what we think it is? Are we really talking about what Hollywood would have us believe?
Let's just say that Tantra in Tibetan Buddhism is often misconstrued.
Okay.
While there are practices involving sexuality, it's not about indulging in pleasure for pleasure's sake.
So not a free pass for spiritual exploration without any boundaries?
Definitely not. No. The source makes it clear that these tantric practices, however veiled in mystery, are about harnessing powerful energies for spiritual transformation.
Right.
Not just sensual gratification.
So we're talking about channeling energy in a very specific, intentional way. Got it. But before we dive any deeper into that particular rabbit hole, can we circle back to the Karma Mudra? You mentioned needing the right one to reach the highest levels of these practices. What's the deal with that?
Ah, yes. The Karma Mudra. This is where the practical meets the profound. Remember how we said it involves another person?
Right.
Well, the source suggests that these individuals, they can come from all walks of life. Butchers, dancers, flower garland makers, even dyers are mentioned.
Okay, that's a pretty diverse group. What do they all have in common that makes them potential Karma Mudras?
It's not about their profession in a literal sense.
Yeah.
It's about their energy, their connection to the physical world, and how that aligns with the practitioner. It's all about finding that perfect energetic synergy to amplify the effects of the practice.
Okay, so we're talking about a very specific type of connection, a kind of energetic compatibility even. But let's be honest, most of us listening aren't planning on searching for a Karma Mudra anytime soon.
Right.
So what's the takeaway for the average person who might be fascinated by all this, but, not quite ready to renounce the material world?
Yeah, that's the beauty of these teachings, right? They offer something for everyone.
Right.
Regardless of where they are on their spiritual journey. Even if you're not ready to dive headfirst into the deep end of the 6 yogas, the core principles can still be incredibly beneficial.
You're saying there are still nuggets of wisdom here that we can apply to our everyday lives, even without becoming Tibetan monks.
Absolutely.
So we're back, and I have to admit, after all that talk of subtle bodies and karma mudras and navigating the afterlife, I'm feeling like a little intimidated.
Yeah.
Like, are we even like cut out for this kind of deep spiritual work?
You know, it's interesting you should say that.
Yeah.
The source material actually addresses that very question.
Okay.
It emphasizes that these teachings aren't meant for everyone.
Right.
It talks about how it requires a certain kind of disposition,
Okay.
a certain level of dedication to really dive into the 6 yogas.
Right, the suitable vessels.
Right.
But what exactly makes someone suitable?
Right.
What are we talking about here?
Well, the source doesn't offer a simple checklist or anything,
Right.
but it does mention qualities like strong renunciation,
Okay.
a deep desire to break free from suffering and the cycle of rebirth.
Okay.
It also emphasizes a strong ethical foundation,
Okay.
suggesting you need a solid moral compass before you start working with these powerful energies.
Makes sense. You wouldn't want to give someone with like anger management issues the keys to the inner fire kingdom, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And on a more practical level, the source stresses the importance of finding an authentic teacher,
Right.
someone who has actually walked the path
Yeah.
and can guide you through the more challenging aspects of the practice.
So it's not just about like reading a book or, dare I say, listening to a podcast.
Right.
You need actual hands-on guidance from someone who knows the territory.
That seems to be the message. The source emphasizes lineage and direct transmission from teacher to student.
Okay.
It even uses the analogy of pouring water from one vessel to another. The transmission needs to be pure and unbroken for the teachings to be effective.
Okay, that makes sense. But where does that leave those of us who are, intrigued by all this but not quite ready to renounce the world and move into a monastery?
Right.
Is there anything here for the unsuitable masses?
Absolutely. I think the key takeaway here is that even if the full-blown 6 yogas path isn't for everyone, the core principles can still be incredibly valuable.
Okay.
Cultivating mindfulness, exploring meditation, working with your breath, these are all practices that can benefit anyone regardless of their spiritual aspirations.
So start with the basics.
Yeah.
Build a solid foundation of self-awareness.
Right.
And maybe, just maybe, those deeper practices will become more accessible down the line.
Exactly. It's a journey, and we all have to start somewhere. And, the source mentions that even simply contemplating these teachings, reflecting on their meaning, can plant powerful seeds of transformation.
Seeds of transformation. I like that. So to our listeners, whether you're considering a deep dive into the 6 yogas or just curious about the potential of your own blazing inner fire, remember that every journey starts with a single step.
And who knows? You might just surprise yourself with how far you can go.